Hello, everyone. My name is Gerard Thomas, and I'm here today with 21 Questions, which is a virtual show that was created for the sole purpose of connecting and finding common ground between the youth and police officers across the United States. I'm also here today with Hey Blue, which facilitates moments of meaningful connections between police officers and the community they serve. And I'm also here today with Word is Bun, which is a student council-led youth program that was created to give voice for and from young people just like me in our communities. Today, I'm your host. I'm Gerard Thomas. I'm 17 years old. I'm a high school senior. Next year, I'll be attending the University of Alabama, where I will continue to study political science and pre-law. Please welcome Officer Ryan Tillman.
Hey, what's going on, my man Gerard? Hey, don't need to call me Officer Tillman, man. Call me Ryan.
Yes.
What's going on, my brother? What's going on?
How you doing? So today I'm interviewing you, but I want to let the people know that I'm filling in today for Kairi Brooks. She will be out for this episode, but big shout out to Kairi Brooks. We miss you. We can't wait to have you back on the show. So how are you doing?
Man, I'm doing good, bro. My butt's burning a little bit because I was running late like always, man. But I got a strong wife, man, who holds me down. So as soon as I ran in the house, she already had the computer set up, my little lighting, and I'm good to go. So I'm good. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing great today. You know, it's great to have you on. It's great to have you here. But could you please tell the people about you?
Yeah, for sure, man. So I'll try to keep it as brief as I can. My name is Ryan Tillman. I am a corporal for the Chino Police Department out here in Southern California. Prior to law enforcement, I had no aspirations of becoming a cop. Couldn't stand cops, man. Had some bad run-ins. My family had some bad run-ins. And like many, I was fueled by a lot of what I saw in the media. So before I got into law enforcement, I grew up in Rialto, California, and then graduated, and I went on to University of Nevada, Las Vegas, and then played there on a football scholarship. And once I got out of there and graduated, you know, the world was mine. The world was my oyster, like I would like to say. And I went into the real world thinking I was just going to go out there and conquer it as soon as I was done. So I got into sales, and then I started selling insurance and different things like that, which had its time and place. It was good for a time. But then once that time was over, I needed to move on. And so my beautiful bride and I, we had got pregnant with our first child, and I was sitting around. And she was looking at me. I was looking at her. I was like, man, I got to do something with my life because, you know, this whole up and down roller coaster of insurance sales isn't going to make it. So my dad's best friend was a captain at a police department and was like, Ryan, you should be a cop. And I was like, negative, not about to be a cop, not about to be the popo, not about to be the man, not about to be a pig. Like that was my mentality. And just to be blunt. And so I'm a spiritual led man, spiritual driven man. And so I prayed about it. And after 2 years of running away from it, man, God put a smack in my face and said, this is what I want you to do. So I got hired in 2013, went to the police academy, graduated almost the top of my class, got out, did my field training program. And even at that time period, still didn't know if I wanted to be a cop just because I felt like every time I pulled somebody over, I was always messing with them. And so after I got out of training, that's when I realized why police officers do what we do, how we do what we do. And I realized that there was quality of life issues that exist. And so my purpose as an officer was to go out there and give people a better quality of life. And so that was right around the time that Michael Brown was killed in Ferguson. And that's when I realized that there's a lot of people that are upset about police, but don't really know why they're upset about police. So I said, you know, I need to go out there and educate them as best as I can. So I founded Breaking Barriers United in 2015. And the sole purpose of Breaking Barriers United is to bridge the gap between law enforcement and the community. And the way I do that is doing presentations to high schools, colleges across the country. I do training amongst police departments across the country. I have a podcast that's downloaded in over 70 some odd countries. And I'm also doing a lot of different work with some notable celebrities right now, like Michael Strahan and some other people. So that's the long, short end of everything, man. I can go on forever, but
I know we're ready to listen.
About you.
Listen, we're ready to listen because you're just like this extraordinary man, and it's great to see a brother of color doing what you're doing, and it inspires me as a young black man. you know, that is a lot of hope for us out there.
Man,
But
that means the world to me.
thank you. So let's just go ahead and jump right into it. So today, my first question would be, what is it like being a brother of color wearing a blue and black uniform in black communities?
So, good question, man. What it's like is I take it with pride, but at the same time, it comes with its difficulties. And the reason I take it with pride is because there's not a lot of men of color in the uniform. And so when I get to do interviews like this with you and I sit down and I'm like, man, like I can be an example to my brother Gerard. Like I can be something that he is not typically inclined to seeing. That's what inspires me, because you ain't never gonna meet a cop that is this fresh, that got the fresh J's. I'm just saying, I'm just playing. but anyways, like I want to be like the real life Mike Lowry from Bad Boys, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like we see all these movies in Hollywood of what law enforcement is supposed to be, but people are like, man, it's not like that. So if I can go out there and be a living, breathing example for you and guys like you, then that's what keeps me motivated. The difficult part about it though is I do a profession that people don't like, especially in the minority community. And so it's kind of like you're danged if you do, you're danged if you don't. You know, you got people within law enforcement departments that don't understand what it's like to be a minority. So when you see things like, you know, Black Lives Matter and stuff on some hands, you know, I can understand like where the frustration and animosity comes from as a man of color and having been discriminated against throughout my life, as well as my family members. But on the other end, you know, when we do our job and we have a job to do and we're doing it with good heart and good intentions, people in the minority community don't always understand that, just because they only see or they only feel what they see. And so those are the challenges that come with the job, but that's also what fuels my fire to continue to push forward.
That's great, because, you know, I was just thinking of that. And it is hard. I can only imagine as an officer, you know, when you have to talk to a young brother, you know, in a community that is full of chaos, and, you know, you're speaking to them and they're like, no, I don't want to speak to you. You're just another police officer, or you're just Uncle Tom. Those are the words that you will hear. And a lot of my friends that I have here go through the same thing of saying, no, I don't want to speak to an officer. I don't care if he's black. I don't care if he's white. I don't care if he's purple. I just do not want to speak to him because I don't trust him. I don't feel like I can give him my all, because I already seen it. I've seen it happen. Even if it hasn't happened to me physically, I knew it happened to me through another person. Because, you know what they always say, as a person of color, you can always feel when another person hurts. So I just feel as though that, you know, having that connection and then learning from it. But you're a prime example that, you know, we have someone out there fighting for us. So instead of us just sitting back and not taking advantage of it, is a waste of your time, especially. But as a young brother, we need to make sure that we are following behind you and setting the example and setting the tone and making sure that we're taking the opportunities that are given and knowing that our way has been paved.
Man, hey, Gerard, you going places, brother. So I'm probably going to be working for you one day. I'm proud of you, brother. I'm proud of you. And what you said, man, you hit the nail right on the head, bro. And so my only goal is so that way, you know, like I always tell people, look, you don't got to like police. My goal is just to get you to see things from a different perspective.
Yes, sir. All righty. So question 2, do you believe the relationship between young men of color and officers will ever change in the community?
I definitely think it will. And it's going to take time. It already has. I mean, you know, even though the media may not show that, even though you might go out your house and you might see an officer interacting with somebody, you may not feel that. It already has. And you can look back to the civil rights movement and look at how police officers were used back then and there. You know, when the police officers were standing, you know, guard for some guy that's giving some racial rant speech, or, you know, or putting dogs on people. And so although we see some, you know, corruption in law enforcement, like, and I say that when you look at like something like the George Floyd situation, even though that's all we see a lot of times in the media, I can tell you as an officer, it's few and far between. Does it exist? Yeah, there's definitely some bad people out there, but that's with anything you see, or that's with anything you do. And so my goal is to go out there and bridge that gap, educate people. And you know, I can give example after example, and I kind of do that through my social media platform, of what started out looking really, really bad and ended up being not as bad as we all perceived it to be. However, when I was in college, I was a journalism and media major. And so one of the things I learned in that is, what sells to people. And so, black man shot by a white police officer is going to sell. They don't care how you feel. They don't care how divisive it is. It's going to sell. If you look at any article, if a white officer shoots a black guy, the article is going to read white officer shoots black man. If a black man were to shoot a white man, the way it's going to read is officer shoots man. And so you can see how there's spins on the media of where it can kind of fuel a burning fire. So does it exist? Absolutely. But to answer your question of whether or not I see we can get better, we will get better. I know we will get better. And the only way that's going to happen is by having transparent dialogue like this. And then me being able to be an inspiration to guys like you. And we see more people of color taking on positions within the department. There was a chief of police that said in Dallas a long, long time ago, is like, if you want to see the change in the police department, hey, we're hiring. And he couldn't have said nothing more better than that, because, man, infiltrate the system. That's what my pops told me, man. Right, Ryan, you need to see change. Go and be a part of that change instead of just doing all this, because we can all do this. But what are you actually doing to be a part of the solution as opposed to the problem?
I mean, wow. Because that's when you said that, just hearing when you said we're instead of doing all of this, we do that a lot in our community, in the minority community, in the black community. The biggest thing is with black protest. It's like when we start a fight, we end it quickly. Mm-hmm. It's a now moment. Let me take on that fame for that now. Let me put on this Black Lives Matter shirt, take my pictures, get arrested by the police, go in the back of the car, record myself, and then I'm gonna forget about it by 2 months. And the biggest thing I heard was by this poet, and she said, "Stop using my brother's name in vain. Stop chanting his name. Stop screaming it. And you're walking around just using it at your own convenience and not knowing who he really was. So it does not give you the right of any person, I don't care what race you are, to use my name while I'm dead. And I was in the problem. You weren't in the problem. You don't know what happened. You don't know the Pacific. You've seen the video. To keep using that and not taking advantage of it, and then we'll have you going there. And the biggest thing I just want to point out to you too is just that the way you keep it up, the persistency of just making sure that we continue to have that fight, reminding us that we have something to look up to, and to wake up every day and to keep fighting, because we stopped. Martha King didn't stop. Maya Angelou didn't stop. Nelson Mandela didn't stop. So why should we?
Man, you're so right about that, man. And I'm telling you, one of these days, does it get tiring? Yes, it does. But, I'm upstairs right now doing this dialogue with you when I could be downstairs spending time with my wife and 3 children. But I know I understand the mission. And that's where people got to realize we've turned the hate for the police into pop culture, and we got to get away from that.
Yes, sir. All righty. So question number 3 I have for you. How do you keep a level head when your community feels that you have betrayed them and the officers at your police department feel like you are not speaking up for them at all?
I laugh because that's a good question, and it goes 2 ways, bro. It goes 2 ways. Sometimes I do get people in the community that feel like I betrayed them, but I always understand my mission. You know what I mean? Like I said, I'm a spiritual guy, and so I'm always going to come back to the spiritual side of me. My relationship with Jesus Christ is that, look, I'm going to a destination. He's given me a blueprint of what needs to be done. And so my eye needs to be focused on where I'm going. And as long as I'm focused on where I'm going, I don't got to get caught up in the nonsense. I use this analogy that anytime I travel, before COVID, I was doing a lot of traveling, a lot of speaking. And at times I would get so bogged down with all the packing, the travel arrangements, what I'm gonna wear tomorrow, what I'm gonna do this, what I'm gonna do there. And what started happening was I was so worried about all the travel arrangements that I forgot about the whole purpose of the destination. I forgot why I was going there. And so what started happening was my wife, my helpmate, she started helping me with doing all the packing and all the other stuff. And so what I learned from that was stop getting so fixated on the travel arrangements and focus on the destination. Amen. And so when I look at the nonsense that's going on, when people from my own community criticize me or people from law enforcement feel like I don't have their back, and like I said, it works vice versa, because I just posted a video yesterday where we screwed up as officers. And trust me, that ain't the popular thing to do. I've heard it many times from officers like, man, why are you calling out bad work by officers? You weren't there and this and that. And the community applauds me for it. And so I get it both ways, but the way I get by it and the way I maintain that level head is I don't get focused on the travel plans, but I focus on that destination.
Hey, man, I mean, the religion part of it too, you know, God will sit you down to remind you of his works and his doing and making sure that you keep, you know, they always say, stay focused on him and all things should come to light. I just think that's something that we always have to just, you know, continue to focus on and continue to work at it. What I have for you today is question number 4 as well. Do you believe that some officers have the right to be upset at the government and not at the young Black Americans in their communities?
So I believe that some officers have the right to be mad at the government and not the Black Americans in the community. I agree with that, and I don't even think it's just officers. I think it's people in general. You know, I'll give you an example, man. We watched today is for the last 3 days they've been trying to impeach, you know, the past president Donald Trump. Whether you like Donald Trump, whether you don't like him, what's going on in our country right now is almost reminds me of watching my 3 children fight. We are so caught up in a lot of these political issues, the political banter, the things back and forth, little stupid stuff, like the most stupidest things ever. And they'll get caught up on it and they waste taxpayer dollars. They waste times putting money into the communities. They waste times actually focusing on the people that need help, all over some stupid banter. And so I don't even think it's just law enforcement that has a right to be mad or frustrated with the government. I think it's all people. You know, because one of my assignments right now, I'm working on this quality of life team. And part of my assignment is I have to go out there every single day and find resources for the homeless people in our community. So I'm going out there, not always arresting them because we can't arrest ourselves out of those problems. We got to find long-term solutions. But the problem with it is when you're trying to find long-term solutions, the system is jacked up in many ways because it comes into a revolving door where you don't even have a place where you can to send these people. And so while all these people are on TV going back and forth fighting over stupid stuff, we're over here doing the legwork trying to make sure we can get the people that are really affected by it into a place so that way they can be off the street. And so I think the frustration is valid for all people that aren't necessarily in politics. Now, this isn't a jab at anybody that's involved in politics because there's some good politicians out there, but it's a awakening for all of us to say, you know what? We need to start focusing on the grassroots efforts within our communities because we can take care of us. I tell this to everybody, like, no matter whether it's Donald Trump, whether it was President Obama, whether it was President Bill Clinton, whether it was President Bush, my life ain't really changed that much since any of them been in office. If I'm being real, if I'm gonna keep it 100, my life ain't really just drastically changed when one of them took over. And so what does that say? That means that a lot of what I do in my own life is going to control where I go. So I can get caught up with all that nonsense that everybody else is getting caught up on, or I can focus on being me, being the best dad to my kids, being the best husband to my wife, and being the best police officer that patrols my streets.
And I mean, I absolutely agree with you because that's the biggest problem right now that we face. I mean, even in my school, so many kids were caught up on President Donald Trump and who likes who. And I'm like, has he changed you? And he's like, no. Has President Obama done anything for you? And I'm like, so why do we have to keep doing this thing of just doing your race or your religion or what you stand for? But have they done anything for you to, like, has it changed anything physically for you?
Yeah.
It might have changed something mentally for you, which we have seen happen these last 4 years. But has it changed anything physically? Have your health care went up? I mean, are your bills being paid? Are you getting a job that you want?
Yeah, exactly.
Issues are being taken seriously. And like you just said, we have the U.S. Capitol. That was tragic. They're still arguing over how to impeach this man, and he's not even in office.
Not even in office, man.
He's gone.
Yep.
Already.
Exactly.
So question number 5. Do you think if the Black Lives Matter march would have stormed the U.S. Capitol, would it have been a different reaction from law enforcement?
Great question. And I'm gonna be real. What we saw, you know, and this is what kind of going back to our last conversation is we like to focus our attention on certain things a little bit more than others, just based on who's involved and who's not involved. Prior to the Capitol, when George Floyd got killed, we saw a lot of peaceful protests, but there were a lot of unpeaceful protests.
Yes.
There were a lot of officers that were hurt tremendously. One of my best friends included in that, who had a scooter thrown at him and he tore his rotator cuff. And so there was a lot of violence that went on during those protests. And so, yeah, we could talk about the peaceful ones, but I also know of a lot of violent ones. I actually went to one. I'd never forget going to one of the protests centered around the George Floyd and listening to the radio. If I can give you guys the radio traffic, it was crazy. People were breaking into gun stores. They were like, hey, there's a car in a Mustang. It just broke into a gun store, stole all these assault rifles, and now it's driving up the street, popping rounds off. Stay on your guard. That's what I'm listening to on the radio. And so that was going on. But even throughout all of that, I can't recall a time where I saw, at least in the media, where officers actually were killing people down in the streets. You fast forward to the Capitol, there were actually people that were there that were killed by police officers. And so although it was, no matter how you look at it, the unpeaceful protests were wrong, the Capitol was wrong, and I spoke out against all of them. We can't always do this what if game, and that's what we like to do as people. We like, well, what if this? Well, what if that? At times in my job, I have to what if, because the what ifs will keep me safe and alive in certain situations because I've physically seen it happen before. But we can't always what if every circumstantial situation that we see. Like, well, what if all those people were black? Do you think it would have went down the same way? And honestly, if I'm gonna be completely honest right now, the way everything is transpired in our country in many ways with, unjustified force by law enforcement officers, police brutality and things like that, it's made white officers more apprehensive to use force against people of color. And I've seen it with my own eyes, which in some ways it's dangerous because we should always have our guard up no matter what color of the skin are, just based off of the threat. And so what I mean by that is they are afraid. A lot of officers right now are afraid to use force because they don't want to be caught up in a situation where they either use excessive force or they kill a black guy or whatever it is. And so if I had to answer that question, what would the necessary force be different? I don't know if I could, just because it didn't happen. What we saw is what happened. I know people got killed that were protesters by police officers. And I also know that police officers were hurt. So, and I saw it in both sides.
Yeah. And I agree with you. The other side of it, though, is that they had 29 officers that were involved. That was the biggest issue.
Yeah.
Having officers there in there, and we can move on to the next question.
No, wait, no, hold on. Before you do that, that's a good, I want to stay there because I know where you're going with that. And you're talking about like 26 officers there that were not like working, but they're part of the protest.
They were working, and then you had government officials and you had other people there. So the biggest thing was for me as a young black man of color, knowing that if it would have been vice versa, we would have never had 29 cops. Yes, we would have had 29 cops taking knees, but we would have never had 29 cops walking into a building, charging, standing in the office, taking selfies. We would have never had the 29 black cops or white cops in there doing those type of things.
And that was wrong. I actually made a video about that. And I said, as police officers, we have a responsibility, at least in the capacity of our duties, to remain as unbiased as we can. There were times during Black Lives Matter protests that I felt a lot of what black people feel being a minority, but that didn't mean I wouldn't partook a part of that protest because I have a responsibility to keep all people safe. I've actually gotten into with family members of why I won't publicly endorse Black Lives Matter. And I'm like, because I can't. That's not my role, because my role as a police officer is remain unbiased as I can. Amen. So I called out those officers that did that, because when you are working, no matter what you identify with, Republican, Democrat, whatever it is, that is not your role. You need to remain as unbiased as you can. It's impossible to say I can't pick a side. But what we do need to do when we're wearing that uniform is like, hey, our priority is preservation of life, is to keep property and people safe. So no matter what you feel, you should be standing guard, no matter who it is. And so I honestly, with what you said, I condemn it completely, because that wasn't their capacity to do that, and they shouldn't have done that. And
thank you so much for giving us that, because that's something that we need to hear. a lot of people are frustrated, and that was the biggest issue. We would never be able to move on from racism or move on from this unjustice system unless those type of things or those type of issues are spoken about. So I thank you for clearing that up and giving us, some insight, and then the people of color know that, hey, we got somebody on it.
100.
All righty, sir. So we have number 6. What do you believe needs to change in Black communities?
All right. So one thing about me, I'm a straight shooter. And so I'm always going to shoot straight. So some people don't like it. Some people like it. In the Black community, one of the things that we have to change is we got to take our own personal accountability. Like, we have to. You can't be mad that, we feel like we're being, unjustly, killed by police officers or targeted by police officers when we target each other at unrealistic rates. And one of the things that people always hit me with, well, per capita and this and that, we're more targeted. If you look at, and everybody always says like, well, if you look at the numbers, Black people are more likely to have force used against them than any other race. And that's a fact. You can go FBI, that's a fact. Black people are more likely to have force used against them than any other race. But when you get that side of it, you also need this side of it that I'm about to give you. What's also fact is that Black people tend to commit more violent crimes than any other race. And so as a police officer, what I know based off of my training experience, anytime you encounter somebody that's committed a violent crime, the odds of you using force are probably going to go up because that person is dangerous or they've shown a propensity for violence. So now that statistic makes a little bit more sense to me, because if we out there committing more violent crimes, then the odds are you're going to probably have some force used against you. And so don't get me wrong. There are still growth there's growth that needs to happen in America involving equality for all races. But at the same time, when we, in our music videos, in our pop culture, and everything you look at, when we have, all this music that endorses, shooting and this and that, and, we got some of our young ladies calling, promoting these young ladies to go out there and be, hoes and B words and all this other stuff. And I say that because I have a young daughter now. Like, we can't go out there and say, oh man, I'm so mad, I feel like I'm targeted by police, but yet on one end, it's okay for us to promote violence and this and that. So if we're going to really change the Black community, we also have to take that personal accountability upon ourselves to do it within our own community as well. I'm all about calling out the bad cops. Y'all know that. People know that about me, but we also got to be able to call out our own race when we also are messing up.
And I absolutely agree with that. I mean, 100%, because we have to it starts in the home. How you're raised, how you're brought about. The biggest thing though, is when you spoke about the music. The music videos, yes, that is a trigger in a Black community. That is what fires up. I mean, starting at 12 and up, that's when you start to see the development of, I want to take that road. I think that's the easy way to make money. I think it's the easy way to get fame, and that's the easy way to get a girl. The biggest thing, though, is if you go to the other side of it, and I have multiple friends. When I go to my rich friends' houses, you hear that type of music. They love it. They're invested in it. Their parents, you would be surprised. Their parents are like, what is that song? I really like it. And they like to see that. So the biggest problem for me is, though, once you try to remove that figure off you, the gold chains, the tattoos, all of that, you're like entertainment for them. It's like that's why I said football, I quit, because I'm not your entertainment. Slavery ended years ago. So you won't be able to justify and tell me that you just like to just see me all thuggish all the time. I mean, and every time it happened in the locker room, we'll be playing music. And every time one of the players would put up some thuggish song, and then there'll be one of us of color, and we'll be rocking the chain, and all the white kids will be like, yay, let's go, man. We love this song. Oh my God, I love him. And then you'll hear something racist. And I say, well, we can't get upset. Look at what you just did. I mean, we can't get mad. What can I say? What can I possibly say to this man right here if he says something racist because of what you just showed him? Now, I mean, it's something I feel like we have to justify in the Black community of the role that was taken before us. That's why I keep reminding people the way has been paved for us to keep going. So why are we stepping back? I said back then we didn't have those type of issues.
Yep, and I want to stay there one last minute too, and I want to take it even deeper than that. So when I had the opportunity to go speak at a college, Ferris State University in Michigan, and when I was there, they have a Jim Crow museum. And when I went to that Jim Crow museum, and I had already knew a lot about Black history because my dad was a firm proponent about knowing your history. My grandfather was and stuff like that. But I had Jim Crow explain to me even more so than I ever had in my life. And what I started to see was in society, in our nation's history, one of the ways of systematically oppressing our people or Black people in general was, making people either making us out to be entertainers or making us out to be animals, like thugs and stuff like that. Well, how did they do that? They did it through the blackface movement, where they would paint their faces black and they would either act like animals. They did it through the figures, Aunt Jemima on the syrup things. And then so what ended up happening as we evolved is we had this stigma of being dangerous. We had this stigma of being entertainers. And so there's no knock on football players, entertainers, no matter what it is. But what we have to do is we have to recognize that we can't feed into the stereotypes that have been created for us. We have to be able to figure out how to abolish those, but still be able to be you. So for me, I've never compromised who I am as a person. I wear fitted hats. I wear J's. That's just me. Some might argue, oh, you look like a thug or this and that. But when you meet me and when you talk to me, you'll know, like, man, that's just Ryan. And so my point is that we have to understand why we've gotten to where we're at in the first place. And once we figure that out, then that's where we got to say, hey, you know what? Maybe we do need to stop, talking about killing people and drugs. Because think about it. If you talk about some of the white homes that listen to the music and watch those music videos, do you think that, yeah, they may love the music, but if we're portraying ourselves to be like some straight up gangsters and they see somebody in public or in the hood areas that look like that, or even let's take it a step further, they become a police officer and the first time they actually have an interaction with a Black dude is somebody that they remember from a music video, do you think that they are going to shoot you because they're racist, or do you think they're going to shoot you because they are legitimately in fear of their life? Well, where does that come back to? A lot of the pop culture that we see. And so when we talk about these uses of forces and we talk about racism, everybody's so quick to label something as being racist. I talked about the George Floyd one where everybody was saying, oh, man, this is racist and all this other stuff. I'm like, was it wrong? Absolutely. Was it racist? I don't know. What I mean by that is, how am I going to be able to tell based off of an 8-minute video that this was a racist act that Chauvin did to George Floyd? How? If I had evidence that showed, hey, this dude was flying Nazi flags, he was Confederate flags, he was making these comments, then yeah, I can absolutely justify it. But the mere fact that a man kneeled on a guy's neck, how is that justified as being racist? And so I'll end on this note is, we have to be careful of calling everything racist, because how are we supposed to know what really is racist when it really does happen? And so I go back to just say, man, we have to work on us as a community in order to start changing some of the things. Don't get me wrong, police got a lot of work to do. Everybody got a lot of work to do. But if we're talking specifically about the Black culture, we got to reevaluate our priorities.
Amen, brother. I took notes when you said it. I had to.
My God. My God.
All righty, sir. So we have, why are so many officers afraid of young men of color?
And that kind of goes back into the last question.
I know it just answered. I said you just answered my question. All righty, so we can just go ahead and go on 8. Why are so many officers let off the hook after they have taken an innocent life?
Great question. So a lot of people, the way the community, and I'm going to step out of Officer Ryan mode real quick, and I'm going to go back to just regular Ryan for a second. When I was not a police officer, I was always led to believe that police officers get let off all the time. You hear about a crazy shooting and then, that officer, of course, is going to get let off, right? But that doesn't really happen. You can Google right now. If you went on to Google right now and just Googled police officer arrested, you'll get tons of stuff that comes up. A police officer is arrested for different things, whether it be unjustified shooting or this and that. The sad thing is it doesn't get a lot of media hype once the verdict comes out. A prime example of that is Jacob Blake. When Jacob Blake first happened and he was shot 7 times in the back, it looked terrible. It looked terrible. But there were so many unknown factors that we didn't know that it was hard to make a judgment call just based on watching that video. So anyways, when all the facts came out, even Jacob Blake said it himself. He said, look, I got tased. I didn't think I did anything wrong, so therefore I felt like I didn't need to comply. They tased him. He said, I still felt like I didn't do anything wrong. That's why I kept fighting. He actually pulled the prongs out. He also said, hey, yeah, I had a knife on me. The knife dropped down to the ground. I was actually going to go reach down and pick it up and then after and put it away. And then I was going to surrender to the officers. If we are truly afraid of police officers, why would you bend down and pick up a knife in front of police officers? There's no logic behind that. None. And so after that interview came out with Jacob Blake, did you see a lot of the media hype that was going on when it first happened? Not at all. You didn't really hear much because everybody was like, well, shoot, they let the officer off. So was he really let off? Was Jacob Blake truly innocent? If you ask me, he wasn't really innocent. There was some of the stuff that we didn't know. And so I say that to say this is that, are there officers that have done some things that are unjustifiable? Absolutely. And usually what I've seen is a lot of those guys get punished. Has it happened in the past where some guys didn't get punished? Yeah, of course. There was a lot of police corruption back in the day. And unfortunately, in parts of the United States, there is some still corruption going on. I can say that because I've seen it. It's fact. But is it happening as large or as much as we think it is? Not necessarily. Like I told you, I've actually seen officers arrested in front of me. And so there are a lot of things that happen, but just because I made this post last week is just because we don't see it, just because we don't hear it, it doesn't necessarily mean that it didn't happen.
Amen. And that's why I want to go in school for law, because I feel as though that's why I don't want to be a civil rights attorney. People, that's the biggest issue. People are so upset because I say it all the time. It's not that I just don't want to be a civil rights attorney. It's just that I do not want to just be defined by one person. I represent all minorities. So Spanish speaking, white, black, anybody that's a minority that cannot fend for themselves deserves my full attention, but deserves my reputation as well. They deserve to have me everywhere. So I don't represent one person. But
and not only that, let me plant a little seed too. There is like one of the things that Breaking Barriers United focuses on is being in the middle. Why can't an attorney on one day be a prosecution and another day to be a defense attorney? Because that, to me, if I'm being honest, that would show me like, man, this dude actually might be level-headed. Like, he's gonna call it as it is. The problem I see is like, and I've seen on both sides, is when you're a prosecution, all you doing is trying to prosecute people, whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent. All you trying to do is prosecute people. It is now gone beyond the actual facts of the case, and it's now come down to a place of winning. Same thing on the defense side is it's gotten away from the actual situation at hand. I just want to win. But if you're somebody that actually, you see something wrong and you feel like, hey, no, I need to represent and defend this person, then defend them. But if they're like, hey, man, this person just broke into this. I have a friend of mine that was just recently robbed at gunpoint with his family. That person, whoever did that crime, needs to be prosecuted. So that's just a little light bulb, man. My mind, I'm like a squirrel, man. My bad. Squirrel.
I know you're okay. I 100% agree with you because I just feel as though that's what we need. You need real people in the courtroom. I don't want to hear you keep saying, okay, it was just his race, his color, because that's why we don't win cases. A lot of the stuff happens in the courtroom. So that's why I try to tell our black brothers and our black sisters, if you do not see something happen, it's because of what we did not do in the courtroom. Stop taking it to the streets. Stop speaking about it. Let's actually do something about it. Let's educate ourselves. That is something that they could not stand about the Martin Luther King movement and everybody back then because they were so educated. They educated themselves. They said, not only will I focus it on the streets, I will take it into the courtrooms. I will go to the White House. I will go to Washington. I will make sure I get inside the room of those because it's two sides. Just like you said, I can be the prosecutor and I can be your attorney. So no, I'm not just this out loud. That's what Martin Luther King said. I march for all. I march for the poor. I march for the wealthy. I march for anybody that just feels though they're not being heard. So that's the
man.
issue that we face right now in America.
We about to work together, Gerard. I'm gonna tell you that.
Listen, we are. Let's build a team. Alrighty, so we has Breaking Barriers United affected the way officer treats you at your police department?
Okay, being honest and being transparent.
Yes.
Yes, it has. But not for ways that I think people might think. I think people think that it might affect me because, I'm calling people out or this and that. It's not necessarily about that. I think it's honestly more so it comes back to human nature and your jealousies and your hatred because somebody's doing something that you're not doing. Is it to a level that's, I can't deal with? Not, absolutely not. As a matter of fact, from day one, since I started Breaking Barriers United, the people at top, my chief, my captains, everybody's always been supportive of me. And if it wasn't for their support, I wouldn't be in a position of where I'm at now to have the success that I'm having. But
Amen.
when you come back to human nature and you talk about your peers and things like that, people get jealous, or they get mad, or, I might ruffle feathers because I call out stuff that, typically, oh, why are you calling that stuff out? But you know what? Nothing ever comes easy. Nothing worth having ever comes easy. And there's a lot of people that Martin Luther King pissed off. There's a lot of people that that Rosa Parks pissed off. There's a lot of people that Jesus pissed off. You know what I mean? So like nothing worth having doesn't come without a challenge. And so, don't get me wrong, man. There's times where it's frustrating. There's times where I'll come to my wife and I'll talk to her and she knows my frustration. But like I said earlier, man, I can't get caught up with the travel plans. I got to keep focused on the destination.
Hey, man, that's what we have to agree on. And I think that's the biggest thing, too. Making sure that you keep your head focused on the prize, because, it might not change now, but the outcome will be totally different from in the future for us young people, even the people that's coming later on and the younger generations before us. I just think that the biggest issue, too, is that people have the misconception of thinking that, oh, who wants to rob Ryan? Why would I want to get in there with him? I mean, I'm going to do patrol with him. I'm on social media, sell all my business. Why would I? And that's what we have to understand. It's not like that. You actually have support within your police department saying, okay, we're here to support you 100%.
Exactly.
That's the thing. Question 10. Is everyone in America getting their voices heard, or are we all speaking over each other?
I think we all speaking over each other. We live in a society now that, and a lot of it's because it's being so polarized with social media, that everybody has an opinion. Everybody has an opinion. And I don't, that's one of the things that makes human beings so unique, is that we all have the ability to think the way we want to think. But I kind of come back to this. I'm like, if you ain't doing nothing about it, then don't say nothing. Seriously. Because you can give me your opinion all day long, but if you don't go out there and do nothing, I'm not going to really respect what you have to say, honestly. Because, and I can say that confidently speaking, because I can tell you how many sleepless nights I've had. I can tell you how many times I've woken up early. I can tell you how many birthdays I've missed. I can tell you how many freaking protests I've gone to. I've actually gone out there, and the words I say, I'm going to actually go out there and try to do or try to live by. And so, everybody want to do this. And it's so easy now because you can do it at the palm of your hands. It's like playing Call of Duty, and you got the video gangsters that will just call you out a name, all day long. But if we was in person, they definitely wouldn't be talking like that. And so social media has created this false sense of, dominance, and, false sense of, hey, I am like, some philosopher that has all the right information. But, all the people that say something, man, unless you're actually out there doing the work, then just be quiet, because it's making things a lot harder, and it's only dividing people. It's dividing people more than it should be. I look at the mask and the no mask, because that's been controversial. Oh, well, you got to wear a mask, or, oh, don't wear a mask, or, and my thing is like, look, I'm all about, having my personal beliefs, and whatever my personal beliefs, you'll see me rock or do whatever I do in my day-to-day life. But I don't want to contribute to dividing people on social media, because that's all it does. If I come out there and tell you, well, I'm not a mask wearer, well, now I'm forcing you, Gerard, to pick a side. Are you going to be down with me, or are you not going to be down with me? And that's what we got. We got too much of this picking side stuff. It's the same thing with the thin blue line. I tell people, I know what the thin blue line represents. There's a lot of this council stuff going on with the thin blue line right now. I know what the thin blue line represents, and what it really represents is a very notable cause. But the reason you will never really see me rock a thin blue line merchandise, or you will never see me rocking it everywhere, is because when I put out a thin blue line, and if I've never met you in my life, Gerard, and you don't like police, what am I doing naturally with that thin blue line before I even say a word? I've already put you at bay, because you already have a preconceived notion about how you feel to police officers. If I don't wear that, and I come with my fitted hat, and I don't even tell you what I do, and we just start rapping, and then later on, about an hour in that conversation, I tell you I'm a cop, you're like, oh, snap, I had no idea you was 5'0". I've already broken down that barrier, so it's harder for you to go back and be like, oh, man, I don't like this dude anymore. And so I think that's where the thin blue line comes in. It makes it harder for us to unify people. So we've created a culture now, because of all these loud voices, that is forcing you to pick a side, as opposed to just being you and then getting to know people, and then realize that it's okay to be different. Right? This last year, 2020, I met two really good friends of mine. One of my buddies' name is Artie. My other boy is named Leon. Leon was shot 5 times by police in his back unjustifiably, and my boy Artie was convicted of murder and served a life sentence until he paroled out after 25 years.
Wow.
Leon, and Artie have become so tight with each other, and we differ in a lot of different things. Like, there are a lot of things we may not agree on, but the one thing is we all are brothers. Like, and so it's crazy because we connect. And so we are living proof that we can connect despite our differences. That should be testimony to the rest of the world that it's okay to be different. We don't always got to be right. It's okay to be different.
And I 100% agree with you. And I want to hit you on the high note with that one. It's what my mom, and I can tell in your household was the same way. My mom is the biggest key to all of this, and my stepmom as well. The biggest thing is knowing your identity as a young Black man of color, as a young man in general. Once you know who you are, you have secured your bag. You have reason to change my idea, because my word is always my bond, and my bond is my word. So if I tell you I'm going to do something, I do it. There's no going around it. The biggest thing is that when you have somebody that's strong-minded like you, or strong-minded like me, or strong-minded around that's doing things that's making change, is that the person that does not have an identity will be so confused and get so upset because you know who you are. That's why you said when you put on the hat and you can wear your clothes, I don't have to keep putting on this khaki shirt and khaki pants to try to impress you and try to make you, okay, I'm trying to dress up like this because I'm trying to impress. I don't know who I am, so I'm going to dress like this because I'm trying to impress you. I'm trying to change my character so I can impress your character. Hopefully they match and we become best friends. But since you know who you are, that changes the whole ball game. But that was all I had. And now a word from our sponsors, CenterState Bank, Ben & Jerry's, big brothers and sisters of Central Florida, and the Verdi EcoSchool, and the Hey Blue Incentive. I thank you all. Those are the questions I had for Officer Tillman, my brother Tillman.
That's right.
And now go ahead and bring it to me.
Woo, all right. So, man, first and foremost, Gerard, you did a phenomenal job, bro. I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
Like my little bro. So anything you need, man, let me know. We are definitely connected. I'm proud that you're going to Alabama too. Stay it up, man. Keep that education up. Enjoy it, man. Enjoy it while it lasts. So I'm gonna just shoot from the hip. I know we almost out of time, but I'm gonna try to be quick. So my first question, man. Do you have a legitimate fear of police based on personal interaction or what you have seen on TV or wherever or social media?
I do not. I once was an explorer, which I worked in the police department, and I learned a lot of different things. I learned, like how you said, you have to educate yourself. So my mom put me in those different programs. So I actually work with police officers. The biggest issue was knowing that when I'm around one, if I felt like it was an issue, let me speak to that officer. The biggest thing is that we never speak. We scream, we yell, and we take things into a different area where it doesn't need to be. So me knowing who I am, and when I'm around an officer, hey, how you doing today, sir? I always make sure like I don't feel fear, and I let other people know, why would you be afraid of the person that's supposed to be protecting you? Unless they have done something to you, then I have no reason to be upset with you, because you're just another human. But if you remove the uniform, the badge, and I see you on a regular day, I'll be like, how you doing? If it was a regular day. So no.
Love that, man. Love that, brother. Number 2, what's your opinion of minorities in law enforcement?
I think they're the biggest key. They're the biggest key that we have right now. You, the other officers around the world that are people of color, are the biggest key to giving us a background, of giving us a true identity of what we're trying to stand for, the true movement. You have to have somebody in the inside, because everybody on the outside is nothing getting done in the inside. The work comes in the inside. So having you there and having other officers, FBI agents, I was just reading an article where you only had 12 officers in the whole FBI firm. And I think that's just something that we needed to have, because we're so afraid of putting on that uniform that you're like, oh, there goes Uncle Tom. And your whole family like, oh, don't talk to me because you're going to put me in jail. Well, that's not what we have. I think that minorities being inside the police department gives people a bigger view and a bigger vision of where we're going in the future.
So I'm going to actually change up one of my questions, because I wanted to piggyback on that one, is okay, if you think it's the key, how do you think we get minorities into the profession?
Educating them. If you really just went and you took someone that just did not like police at all, or just getting someone of color or getting a minority to go inside the police department and experience it and say, listen, you might not have as much, you might not move as quick, you might not read as fast, you might not get liked by everybody, but you're doing something in your community. Because once you have that, I know, for example, when I used to live in Vero, the biggest thing we used to have the sheriff, and he was a black man, and we used to call him Big Ben. And Mr. Big Ben, he does everything in that community. He's not even the chief, but the connection that he has with the teens. Who was smoking today? The school said they smelled weed. Who was smoking? You're not telling the school officer. So go ahead, before I call your mama, do you want me to call you? And that's the type of connection that you have with that officer. So I know you have the same connection with teens. It's like, I can get that out of them more than what the other officers trying to be so firm. Like, so who was smoking? I'm going to put you in jail. It's just like, I know your mom. We know you're scared for real.
Let me call your mama now. Let me call your mama now.
That is the biggest thing. You're not this tough dude. So with having them in there and having minorities that can connect how you're relating with me and how you related with so many others, is that you can't have that connection.
Man, I love that, bro. I love that. What is police brutality to you?
Police brutality. Whew. To me, it's just when I watch a Ahmaud Arbery, that is something. If I just piggyback from George Floyd and all of them, if I can watch a Ahmaud Arbery or a Trayvon Martin, my real cases, the real people that have really just lost everything they had, that is something that has really gave me a different view of a lot of different things, because you don't go looking for trouble sometimes.
So let me ask you this real quick though, because I don't want to cut you off, but with those cases, and this is something I learned with Ahmaud Arbery and with Trayvon Martin, those weren't done at the hands of police officers. The Ahmaud Arbery ones, they said they were used to be cops, but they were just some regular, normal civilians essentially. And Trayvon Martin, same thing. But the reason I asked that is because, and again, I could be wrong, but I think this kind of goes back to my media point, is we've lumped everything together and almost makes it hard to distinguish what's police brutality and not. So let me ask you a question, because Trayvon Martin wasn't killed by the hands of a police officer. It was killed at the hands of a white man in Florida. Ahmaud Arbery, they said the guys are used to be cops, but they weren't currently cops. So those are two guys in the neighborhood that gunned down, because they were wrong. Don't get me wrong. The deaths of them were completely wrong, but they weren't at the hands of police. Okay.
So let me give you something. It didn't happen that it were police officers, because sometimes brutality doesn't happen to you physically. Mm-hmm. It can happen inside the courtroom. It can happen to where the case doesn't get heard. Trayvon Martin, his killer, his father was the highest ranking judge in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
So when his case went to the courthouse, it never really got anything solved, because his dad did everything already. That's why he's back on the streets and killing more people as he goes, and making people sign Skittle bags and saying, hey, I did that. And then when you go back to Ahmaud Arbery, they probably weren't cops. But we know that he was friends with the prosecutors. We know that the prosecutor that was supposed to prosecute them said he couldn't do it because he was close friends with them, and said that everybody in the town loved them. Not only that, he knew connections within the police department, within law enforcement, and knowing those different connections. So it didn't happen, but the connection of it. The same way if I had a connection with you.
And so I love what you bring up, and I love that, and we're going to stay here for a second. The reason I want to stay here is because, and this is one thing that I've learned since being in law enforcement. Again, this is one of those, that's why I say this is the advantage now that I'm inside, I understand things. Sometimes law enforcement can be the doormat to everybody else's problems. For example, there's a huge I don't agree with a lot of things that happen in the court system, whether somebody either got let loose or whether somebody was prosecuted too much. I've seen it happen. But the moment I arrest somebody, if I go out today and I arrest somebody, I have probable cause to arrest somebody for doing something that they violated. Boom. I write my report. That leaves me. And now the only time I'm ever contacted is if I have to testify. What happens in that courtroom and what happens with the judges, that is not in my hands. So does that mean that the system needs correction? Absolutely. But is that necessarily my problem? And so the sad thing about it is, unfortunately, because we are the first line of government that people see, people will put that on law enforcement now and say that's the police officer's fault, as opposed to looking at the prosecutor or looking at that judge, instead of standing up and saying, you know, we need to recall this judge. We need to get rid of this attorney. They come to the police officers and say, you know what, we're going to defund police because that's what needs to happen, when defunding may not even be the sole problem. And so I love this dialogue that we're having. And what you said about Ahmaud Arbery and Trayvon Martin, absolutely, bro. Like, those people, their families deserve justice. But at the same time, does it mean that the problems were caused and initiated by the police officers themselves? And that's what sucks on behalf, as a police officer and as a Black police officer, is like, man, like, that had nothing to do with me. Like, it's like you see two people arguing with each other, and then all of a sudden they throw you in there. Like, man, how the heck I get caught up in this?
But you know what the crazy part is too? Okay, I 100% agree with you. It does not involve you, but the other officers. And we had to go back because I went to March for Our Lives in Washington, D.C. When that happened in Parkland, that dude walked past. He went to McDonald's. He ate. He watched himself on the news. He ate. He sat there. He walked past the police. The police didn't jump, flinch. They seen him. I mean, they just let him walk. And then the police officer said, hey, I noticed that dude over there. Is that the shooter? Kindly put him in handcuffs, put him away. That was the first time I was showing people, okay, why are you not being aggressive with it? He just killed 17 kids. But if I take you to South Carolina, when we had 9 Black people killed in the church, had officers take him the night of to a restaurant to go get a burger, fries, and a drink. Like, hey, I'm proud of you. You did that. You killed those Black people. We're proud, 100%. Not saying that you did it, but the consequences of their actions affected what happened to you. So I believe that we get to see you first, but it plays a bigger role of if you're a partner, like what happened with George Floyd. Why people were so upset is because, like TD Jakes said too, we're both religious people, but I listened to TD Jakes, and the biggest thing he took Chiefs. And he said, I'm upset with the people that were standing there. If you do not have a partner that is honest with you, saying, hey, bro, that is totally wrong. I should not be taking him to Burger King to get some food. Or this is totally wrong.
Well, see, if I told you that I've given McDonald's to somebody that just killed 2 people, would I be wrong? Because I have.
You see?
I have, and see, and this is why. It's not because, and this is where it comes back again to my faith. The reason I give, and it wasn't because of race. It wasn't because of, that's what I have. Well, one, I have to, because by law or by policy, even if you've done something, if you've been in custody for a certain amount of time, you don't lose all your humanity. We still have to feed you. But for me, it's one of those things, like, one is an easy way to get confessions, very easy way to get confession. You butter somebody up, you make them feel like you cool, then they'll tell you everything you need to hear because they feel like you're now a friend, as opposed to, and in the back of my mind, I'm like, boom, I got him now. That's why I side you a drink. You hungry? You doing this and that? Cool, because when I get in this interview, I'm about to have you tell me everything you want to hear. But again, how is it publicized? Oh man, they was out there feeding them. How do we not know that they weren't actually trying? It was part of their strategy. The second thing is going back to what I was saying before. The spiritual side of me is, at the end of the day, my firm belief is that when I leave this earth, every single one of us is going to be judged and have to give an account for everything that we did. So I have a job to enforce the law based off of what's right and what's wrong, but it's not my job to judge you. And I've told every single person, I don't tell every single person, but when I've had these conversations with people that I take to jail, even on some of the most heinous acts, when we're talking about sexual exploitation of children, I still cannot judge that person. And because I can't judge that person, I will still treat you like a human being, because I know at the end of the day, one day they're going to be judged, whether it's on this earth or in another life. And so my point is that we can't always be so quick to say, oh man, they feeding this cat and this and that. And then going back to how come they were taken in cuffs with, without anything else, is that there's still laws and policies that govern our response to a certain situation. If I were to go out and do a mass shooting right now, and I do that mass shooting, and the moment cops show up, I put my hands in the air, then I no longer can shoot you, because technically I'm no longer a threat. I can only shoot if I feel like I'm an immediate threat to that officer. And so if somebody surrenders, which in those cases, which we saw, they surrendered, I can't just pull my trigger. Even if I wanted to put 50 hot ones in them, I can't do it, because I still have now violated that person's right of surrender. So I understand what you're saying, that, hey, I feel like we don't get the same treatment. And I think that we don't get the same treatment, not only sometimes with law enforcement, unfortunately, but the people that call in. Because think about that. You're running down the street as a black man in the neighborhood. Somebody feels you're suspicious. So now, as a responding officer, I have to come and talk to you because the person over here felt you were suspicious, even though you were only minding your business. So when I get there, you look at me and you mad at me because you feel like I racial profiled you, not even realizing that the lady up the street called and said you were suspicious. And whereas the white guy walks down the street and nobody calls the police because nobody thinks he's suspicious. And so that's what I'm saying, is it kind of goes back to our conversation earlier when we talk about the stereotyping. It's not just in law enforcement. It is a societal thing that we have to be able to move forward in, because I bring up those examples because I have been that guy that's been called on and said I was suspicious. I have been that guy that was walking in the neighborhood talking on the phone on a conference call, and the police show up at my door saying, hey, man, somebody said that you were casing the area. You got the red pants on or whatever it is. And I'm like, man, I was just chilling. And so that's my point, is I understand the frustration, Gerard. I understand the frustration that we as black people have. But at the same time, there's always more that meets the eye. If they're giving somebody McDonald's, it can be a lot of things. It can be, hey, we're going to warm this dude up so we can get a full confession that he took 17 people's lives. It can be like, hey, you know what? We have policy that states if a person is in custody for 8 hours, we have to go get them food, or I'm going to be in violation of policy. That's why I say there's always more that meets the eye. And like you said earlier, the only way we're going to find that out is through education.
Hey, man, but see, that was the biggest thing, too. That's something that we never knew. The people. And I think that goes.
And that's our fault. And that's our fault as law enforcement for not stepping up and being able to educate people. And that's where we miss the boat in many things, is because we always like to say, oh, no, we got to keep it tight to the hip. Like, no, like in certain cases, yes. If there's an event, if there's an officer involved shooting, yes, we have to be very careful on how we disseminate information, because if we don't, then it can be detrimental to everybody involved. But at the same time, when we do know, or if there is information that needs to go out there, or if there is education that needs to go out there, we need to make sure we go out there and do that instead of letting people take their own narrative.
And I 100% agree with you.
Man, I love this dialogue, bro. I can go on for days.
I know the time.
Let me do a few more, John. I know you said that I did tell you I have a hard stop, but I'm gonna go for like 10 more minutes if you're good with that. 10, 15 more minutes. Because I think it's worth it, man. And this is bigger than everything else I got to do. So let me see. Let me move forward real quick. I was going to ask you if you would ever consider joining law enforcement. I'm going to say no, because I know what you want to do. You want to go into the legal side of things.
I almost joined the Marines, but I knew it wasn't for me. I was almost there. By then.
Wait, what? Okay.
And that's when I was thinking about joining the Army and the military. And my brother's in the military, so I was like, no.
Got you. Do you think law enforcement is a racist system? If so, why? A racist system, if so, why?
No.
Why not?
I don't believe so, because it's just like a school system. We can't say the public school system is racist when there's white kids inside there as well. I go to a private school. I can't say that the school is racist, even though we only have 20 black students, and majority of them out of 500 students are white. I just can't say that's true. What I can say is that not enough information is being provided. The same way you just explained to me why you're taking someone to get a hamburger right after they just did something so terrible, or why you're trying to make that person feel so comfortable. If I'm not being educated or taught, how would I know? So in law enforcement, it's no racism. It's a lot of it in some areas. In other areas, there's less of it. It's just that the bigger picture, the bigger parts of it all is if the information is being provided and if officers are being educated enough to say, let me help educate the people in my community. Because if you live in that community, I expect or I hope that you want to educate the people in that community with you. That's the biggest.
So that's a phenomenal answer, and I agree with you. One of the things we said in our community is that the system of law enforcement is racism or racist. Back in the day, I think you can say that only because I know we can say that in certain situations because I know that there is in fact KKK members that were part of law enforcement, and law enforcement had a job to protect those that were invade on people's rights and all this other stuff. But being a police officer now, I can't go out there and say, how am I going to say a system is racist when I'm a black man working at a department? Nobody's ever told me, hey, go arrest that dude because he's white or go arrest that dude because he's black. Second of all, I've actually been able to promote and move up. I had one of my supervisors tell me, hey, Ryan, do you think that you've been discriminated on because you're black? And I was like, honestly, sir, I have to say no on that. And the only reason I'm going to say no is, doesn't mean it hasn't happened. No, it probably has happened, but I can't prove that. So even if it does happen, how can I prove that? How can I prove that this person is discriminated against me because of the color of my skin? So as opposed to marinate on, man, I'm being discriminated on because I'm black, I just focus on going harder in the paint to where you can't deny me or you can't do certain things because I'm just, doing what I'm supposed to be doing. So is there racist people within a system? I think racist people exist in all systems, but to say the whole system is racist, we can't do that just because if it was, then I wouldn't be in a position. Martin Luther King wouldn't be standing here today saying, oh, you know what, man, like that's a racist system, but they sure do got some black people in there.
I mean, I 100% agree with you. And that's the biggest thing too, just having people, example is having education on both sides of the ball. People get educated, people reading the books, people not watching media all the time. So that's the biggest thing.
Yep. This is my last question. I'm going to tie two together. Well, actually, I got to ask the other one, but I will just try to make it quick. Do you think social media sensationalizes police brutality, and is it popular to not like police?
Yes. But they do it in a way to, and this is the biggest key, they do it for Black communities. They make sure that they would keep portraying us to be the victims, that we would stay victimized, we will stay victims, we will stay being deluded in our own sorrow all the time. We'll keep doing the same thing. I think the thing that we need to have is force. We need to start having our own mentality, start taking charge of our own lives. If you think about a Jew, like Jay-Z song, the still word, when he made that song about OJ, he's saying that, the Jews, they're making all this money, they're doing this and they're doing that. They've been through the same thing. Well, half of the same thing. Are they still being discriminated against? Yes. But are we taking control of our own lives? I mean, when the Black Wall Street got burnt down, did we try to rebuild? When they stopped us from voting, did we try to keep voting? So every time something happens to us, we just stop instantly. But when someone of our own does it, we can keep attacking each other. We can break each other down. I mean, I would think that we would stop as easy as if it was somebody of another race. But no, when it happens to us, when we stay victimized, we stay doing things that, okay, like you said, we're going to keep doing these videos. We're going to keep making this money. But I don't know the long run. I don't know the effect that it has on everyone else. And the biggest thing is, too, like my mom say, anything that you do has a triple effect on anybody else around you. So having that is the key.
Man. Bro, you are one solid dude, man. Like, I was going to ask you the last question, but I think I know what it is. And I was going to say, what can police officers do better? And I knew you would probably say educate the community, but I could be wrong. But that's my last question.
I mean, just I was just talking to Mr. John about this, is having that sense of knowing that you're supposed to protect and serve. That when you're protecting, that you have a visual eye of understanding, taking notes. You're just like, it's like a war, but you're not in the actual war. I mean, you're being shot at. Occasionally you get to go home. Okay, you have to make that decision. Will I go home tonight with my family? Will I tell my kids this great story of who I met? But I think that it should be a learning experience for an officer. to take on that, go in that car every morning, to wake up, not feeling so depressed, because there's actually people out here with tough jobs that can't get a job, that don't have nothing, and you have the ability to change someone's life. I mean, I see one officer, you're doing it. It was another officer that was passing out water to people in his community. I mean, brighten up his day. If you say hello, I know your name. That's the biggest thing.
Yep,
so
absolutely.
Officer just keep themselves, educating us, keeping up with the community, making sure that you're doing the right protocol, and teaching people the laws.
Man, I love it. Man, Gerard, you are phenomenal, bro. You are going places. This is the start of a long time brotherhood. I promise you that.
Hey, man, I'm here.
John, you're phenomenal just for hosting this event. And man, thank you, man. That was all my questions. I probably learned more from you today than you learned from me. And I truly believe that. Keep doing what you're doing, bro. Keep your foot on the gas. You know, the only way to move forward is you got to be different. And sometimes people are afraid to be different. And so I think that's one of the things that, you know, I always remind myself, it's okay to be different. Sometimes it will get lonely. Sometimes, you know, people may look and say things about you, but it's got to get uncomfortable in order for you to make it to where you need to go. So I love you, bro. Seriously, I really do love you.
Thank you so much. And same over here, brother. We have to really keep in contact. I have to really keep up with you on social media. I have to actually give you my number because this.
Yeah. Send your number over to me. I'll send you mine back.
Okay. I have to do this because keeping in contact and inspiring others and keeping in contact with the young. Let me go. And I believe that we had to have a. It was.
I'm gonna show you my oldest right now. Come here. Say what's up.
How you doing?
Yeah, that's my big boy. This is the example I have to be the example for.
You see?
Oh, somebody said, what am I working on with Michael Strahan? Oh, y'all trying to be all up in the business right now. I can't. I'm not at leisure to disclose right now, but hopefully you guys will know. Prayfully, you guys will know soon.
You never try to keep it in. You know, we did see the interview with Oprah.
Oh. Hey man, that was my twin brother.
Hey, look, at first I was like, should I do that? Should I do the smooth talk?
Hey, I'm sorry for jumping in, man. I know we have to be respectful of Ryan's time. I just want to say, Ryan, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I mean, you are an absolute monster, and having this amazing conversation with Gerard and building this connection is what Hey Blue is all about, and we really, really appreciate you jumping in. So,
hey, John, I love you, man. From day one, I appreciate you. Thanks for it all, man. Thanks for it all. I have access to this video, right? If I want to reshare it with people.
Absolutely, yeah. So what happens is we, just to cut it short, I know we're live, but we break each question down that you ask each other, and then we put it out question by question over a month's time.
I love it.
So this way you can share it as much as you like.
Perfect, man. I'm gonna use that. You just gave me content for a month. Thank you.
Yeah, baby. You're all right. You're fine. You're fine. But I know that you have to go, and this was Gerard's first time, and I just wanted to come on and say, you guys are absolutely.
Thank you.
You guys were amazing. So, Ryan, blessed to your family. Please be safe out there. There are people just like me. I'm retired and I'm watching you, and I have so much respect for what you're doing and the connections you're trying to build. So I don't want to keep your time. I said, so you head out, keep me and Gerard.
Thank you guys.
On.
Appreciate it.
All right. And
thank you, brother.
Good luck to the family, man.
Take care. Hey, send me your contact info, Gerard. Stay in touch.
We'll send it. I'll share it. All right.
Thank you.
Excellent. Talk to you guys. Bye.
All right. Thank you. So now, Gerard, nobody wants to see this ugly mug. They want to see that beautiful face right there. So I just want, we're going to drop off. I just want to get your take, right? Ryan Tillman always does his Tillman take for everything that happens in policing, where he grabs videos and he talks about it. I want to get your opinion. The man that you just interviewed, right? Tell me about what you thought, and did he surprise you at all?
You can feel like the warmness. It surprised me to feel the warmness of knowing that you have an actual brother. When they say your brother is my keeper, and just knowing that he was truthful in everything that he felt, he didn't hold nothing back. He was a man of his word. That's the biggest thing of being a man of your word and staying by your word. Educating myself, listening, learning things I didn't know, learning about what happened, like when they took one of the criminals downtown, knowing why, and removing myself so I can educate myself on knowing why they do everything the way they do it. He was a very good inspiration. He inspired me. Now I know I have to wake up every morning and do some workout drills and do a few things, but he has inspired me as a young Black man and as a man in general to keep going and persevering through things that may come as an obstacle, but block out all the noise, block out all the racial slurs, block out things that speak about racism. Because if you're not racist or you have nothing in that type of area and you treat everyone equally with equality and respect, then I don't have to worry about the others that are on the outside that are more assertive, doing things that are just unjustifiable.
Awesome, man. Awesome. I'm glad that you had this opportunity to connect and
Thank
find
you
common ground with him. Say it again.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, are you kidding me? You are amazing. And just like Kairi Thomas Brooks, you guys are just like, we're so blessed to have you on the Hey Blue Initiative, be a part of the Hey Blue Initiative as well as Word is Bon Bavard, and to be hosting 21 Questions, because it is my opinion, and you know this, that your voice, Kairi Thomas Brooks's voice, they are the strongest and most, like, this is what we should be using both of our ears to focus on the most. Everybody across the United States should be listening and learning, just like how you learned today, right? You guys had this conversation, you learned today, and now your voice is even stronger because now you have a greater understanding of what goes on. So, so I appreciate you. Thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate our sponsors. So I'm gonna bring us to the end. So thank you so much to Ben. No, stay here. You're staying here with me, man. So thank you so much. Actually, all right, I'll read it. Thank you so much to CenterState Bank. Thank you so much for Ben & Jerry's. Thank you so much to Big Brothers and Big Sisters of Central Florida. And the man that's on the 1 and 2s is helping produce this right now, Brian Zabeklis. Thank you so much. Thank you. Yes, thank you so much to my wife, Ayana, and the Verdi EcoSchool. And thank you so much to everyone that has participated in watching this episode of 21 Questions from the Hey Blue Initiative. Hey Blue facilitates moments of meaningful connection between police officers and the communities that they serve, just like this tonight.
Amen.
Gerard, you were amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I look forward to building greater connection and greater awareness together. I hope you have a fabulous. But I think we forgot one question, and that was the one question you would forget to ask him. And that was, hey, Ryan, do you still have love for me? So I'm going to ask you, Gerard, do you still have love for Ryan?
Of course I do. It'll always be love. There's nothing but love.
Absolutely. All right, man. Brian, take us out. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching this evening. And stay tuned. I mean, not stay tuned. Tune in. I'm sorry. Tune in 2 weeks from tonight, where we have Lieutenant Edwin Raymond of the NYPD join us. And it's going to be another tremendous show. So please tell your friends, tune in. Thank you so much. Have a great evening.
Have a great night, everyone.